If you take one technician running 105 calls a month and 35 opportunities to sell new equipment, he might bring in $140,000 in equipment sales. But now if you take that 105 calls and you send him on 105 opportunities with equipment that's old, he can bring as much as $420,000 for that month, just because you're sending the right man to the right job.
Welcome to The Boost, a podcast for home service contractors. We explore leaders and innovators in home services, their personal journeys, thoughts, and experiences with growth, marketing, and succession. We cover the good, the bad, the ugly, and its ultimate impact.
Hey everyone, Zach Wilson, Chief Marketing Officer here at Local. Welcome to the Boost podcast. So today we have JG Van Graan. JG and I met pretty recently, a few months ago at a conference and hit it off. And so I thought I'd have JG on here today to talk mostly HVAC. And JG's been in the industry, I think, 25 years. Yeah, so let's just start.
Hi, Zach. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm one of those classic stories in this industry where the industry picked me. I did not pick it. Born and raised South African. I came here when I was 17 with a suitcase and $400. And the first thing I bought was a Bruce Springsteen CD. So I just needed to let that out there. Went to college, got married, and was working on a horse farm in Bluefield, West Virginia. My wife, girlfriend at the time, was moving back to DC. So I followed her, started in construction a little bit, went back to farming, and we became pregnant with our firstborn. You know, you're working 6 days a week.
Coming full circle, tapping back into your life, doing ductwork, installing, to being a comfort consultant, to now to being in technology sales. So not to get salesy, but this is a genuine question. What is ThermoGrid? How does that play into savings, efficiencies, etc.?
So there's two things ThermoGrid does really well. Inventory management, we'll just start there. That's a big deal. And I'll tell you why. There's so much inventory in guys' trucks and in their warehouses that they are not always sure what they have. And, you know, unfortunately in this industry, we don't always have honest service technicians. And so there's a lot of side work going on. And it is staggering once you start adding up how many small capacitors, whatever, might be walking off the truck to fix a buddy's unit. Once you actually start putting an amount on that and you start actually tracking what you're losing as a business owner, it's insane. We actually had a company that we were able to help with some inventory management stuff, and he started just kind of gathering how much was going out before and how much less, because as soon as the inventory management got on the phones and everything, and everybody had to start checking things out of their trucks, it kind of put a stop to things just, you know, rolling out. And so he was doing a comparison year over year, and the amount of inventory that walked away for him for several years was insane. So there's a big piece we can do to help that. And then within the software, we make it really easy. So when somebody goes out and say, for instance, they sell a system to a new homeowner, once that proposal hits the software hits back to the office, that can actually, we can set the software up to where it will actually email the order straight to the supplier or the vendor with instructions of when we're picking it up. So it helps make the office staff's job a lot easier. There's enough that they have to deal with getting permits and everything else ready. So, but for a pull list or a pick list to be able to be sent to number one, the warehouse manager, and number two, you know, the vendor, that's very helpful. The other thing we do really, really well is dispatching, smart dispatching. So within our software, we track certain KPIs, we track certain things that the technicians does in the field. Callback rates, highest ticket averages, that type of stuff. So, and then we build a profile for each technician. So when the call comes in and the dispatcher sits down wanting to put the next technician up for bat, it will recommend the best technician to go to the job. It'll look at skill level, it'll look at callback ratios, it'll look at highest ticket averages, and it does, the algorithms run all that stuff through and then gives the dispatcher an opportunity to make a decision to send the best person to the job. And so I've done several webinars now and presentations on why companies tend to want to dispatch by location. You know, John is in the driveway here. Mrs. Smith across the street called in. Let's send him over there. And then that's okay. I understand. But you have only one opportunity to make a first impression. If John doesn't know how to work on that unit and he messes up, you guys send somebody back out tomorrow. Was that really worth it? I don't think so. So the other thing that we really look at in the realm of smart dispatching is you start dispatching technicians to jobs that they're really good at, right? So if I have one guy that's good at selling equipment, then I want to send him to every job that's got a 10-year or older system on it so that I can capture that revenue. There's a presentation I do that I have all the math laid out. If you take, just for example, really quickly, and I don't want to bore you, but if you take one technician running 105 calls a month and 35 opportunities to sell new equipment, he might bring in $140,000 in equipment sales. But now if you take that 105 calls and you send him on 105 opportunities with equipment that's old, he can bring as much as $420,000 for that month, just because you're sending the right man to the right job.
So for myself and everybody else, where does this come into play typically? Is there a revenue number, revenue target? Is it a personnel, a truck? You get a lead and you're like, yeah, this is a one-man operation. Like obviously it would be a good lead. Who's your ideal customer?
That's a great question. For us, I believe everybody that touches a truck, one-man operation to 25, 30-man operation, should have software to help track the customer base and help do these things. So 65% of this industry is 1 to 3-man owned shops. I don't know if you knew that or not. So most of this industry
That's
is small
crazy.
contractors.
I actually did
Yep.
not know that.
So we always see the bigger guys because they use marketing, right? But the smaller guys don't necessarily do that. But there's a ton of guys out there that is 1 to 3-man shops. So we gladly would help those guys. But where software really start paying off, in my opinion, is once you have somebody in the office, somebody taking calls, somebody booking, and using the software accordingly. We would like to help everybody because we have several customers that's 1 to 2-man shops with the wife at the house using the software. For us, though, to really get the value out of the software, a lot of times I like to think 5 technicians and up is really a good place, because then you can really start honing in on the smart dispatching piece and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's smaller than I thought, that's for sure. I was kind of thinking that it was on the larger side, more enterprise, if you will. So then does it cap out anywhere?
Also a great question. We have a customer that we service with 36 technicians, and we do that seemingly. There's no issue there. So I don't think there's a cap necessarily. So ThermoGrid went through a server change in the beginning of last year to where we switched to the AWS service, which is the service that Amazon owns. And it's the biggest, fastest service in the world. So our capability is there to do, a lot of things. I know there's some of our competitors in this space that will not talk to small customers. My opinion is I help you when you have 1 to 2 guys, and you'll remember who I am when you have 10, 15 guys, right? So why don't we use the software to help you grow and answer these questions? There's a big part of ThermoGrid as well that does a lot of KPI tracking and helps with understanding what your business is really doing financially. Are you charging enough? That type of thing. And from the marketing piece, no matter if you have 1 or 2 guys, if you have 15 guys, you should always market as if you are a bigger company. I don't think that's necessarily dishonest. It's just making sure that we put the best foot out there. Yeah, I have trucks. I do pay my guys well, that type of thing.
Right. Sounds kind of cliche, but you got to spend money to make money. I mean, that's just the reality. I always say, sweat too, but people always forget about, well, if I do, XYZ myself, then I can save this money. And it's like, yes, of course, but there's a time and money value associated with sweat, right? Like whether you do it or someone else does it, or you hire a vendor, an agency, or, a SaaS company, someone's got to do it. The money's got to go somewhere. It's part of the cost equation for being a home service provider, and the job has to be done, whether it's your time, CSR, dispatch, technician, whoever, it's got to be done. And there's a cost associated with that time. So
I have a quick question. I'm interested to see what your answer is. So what do you recommend? Say we have a company, $5 million company. What percentage of sales do you recommend should go back into marketing?
It depends. Anywhere from 3 to 10%. 3's on the low end. A lot of people will come in and, spend, 10%, 5 million. That's a big number.
Right.
And then you cut it down to 5 million, 10% is $500,000, right? And you cut it down to 5%, that's $250,000. Then you cut it down to 2.5%, it's $125,000 for a $5 million company. Well, at that point, are you looking to get 30% growth year over year? You're not going to do that spending 3%.
What are you going to do with $100,000?
I mean, don't get me wrong, you can do a lot with $100,000, but you're not going to get 30% growth. That $100,000 is probably going to buy you your sustained growth. Hopefully you're not going to lose money, right?
It's funny. For years and years, the industry standard, I will never forget this. I'm talking 10 years ago, industry standard, 2%. You should never spend more than 2%. There's these bigger guys started coming out, And I remember there was a big conglomerate that opened up a location in Raleigh. And I walked into their office because I saw their advertising, and they just came out of the blue and they were advertising, and they have 25 trucks and they have plumbing and they have all this other stuff. And I'm like, why have I never heard of these guys? Because I was a territory manager. I got to get them to sell my equipment. And I walk in and there's a desk with a fold out chair and a guy and a computer. So we became friends, and he did become one of my customers. But the deal was their larger locations, other places in the country, they used that advertising here locally. And the homeowners here was like, well, we need to do business with this huge, large company. And this guy had one service technician. And so their motto though was 10% of everything went back into advertising. That's how they built what they did. Now one of their locations was bringing in 94 million. That was a nice advertising budget. They were doing Super Bowl commercials and all kinds of stuff.
Right. That's a very healthy advertising budget.
They grew very
Marketing.
fast. And the reason they grew so fast is because they put the money in advertising.
Right.
I would caveat that too, back to the billboards and, the hyper local strategies. You can waste a lot of money. Once you get into digital, you can have money not working right for you. I mean, we get so many people come to us, and unfortunately, I don't know the suburbs of Raleigh very well. What's a suburb of Raleigh?
I guess Clayton would be a small town right outside of Raleigh.
Okay. So let's say there's someone in Clayton and they come to us and they're like, we're small. We've got 3 techs and an office manager and an owner and blah, blah, blah. We want to grow. It's like, okay, well, there's 4 other in Clayton, right? And
Sure.
nobody even in Clayton knows them, but very few people. There are only 3 techs. And they come and you look at their stuff and it's like, they're spending all their money in Raleigh.
Yeah.
And you're like, what are you doing? Like, you're not going to win business in Raleigh.
Right.
Like, hyper focus in your backyard and your
Right.
neighborhood, and get a deal with the high school, get a deal with the middle school, get a deal with every auto body shop, and like get in everyone's ear and back pocket first. Then you can move every neighborhood on your way to Raleigh. And even with digital, it works that way, right? Like, you want to go compete in Raleigh, your cost per click or your cost per lead is going to be like $20, $30. And, maybe out in Clayton, since nobody's doing it, you could get it down to, I don't know, like 10 or 15, right? So spend your money there. And there's just too many people that are like, I want to do business in this major city that's 60 miles away. It's like, no, dude, like, let's focus around, and especially with like the hyper local aspects of digital. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. It just
Right.
doesn't. You have to spend a lot of money to make these big leaps digitally into neighboring markets and neighboring areas. So it's just funny. I mean, going back, who you're working with and who's in the industry, sometimes people just overthink it. A lot of it is really basic, and some of it's even very old school. Like I said, just working with shaking hands and being out in the community and, being at job fairs and things like that, and just having a $50, step and repeat thing that you pop open and you pull out of your truck. I mean,
Right.
it's just like some things is just one customer at a time. So anyway, that's a good segue that I like to ask everybody too. Through your journey on the sales and marketing side, what were some of the things that you saw that were just like, absolutely, I mean, 25 years, you've got to have a story or two that were just like, man, we just wasted so much time or money on this, or we were just printing money doing, this or this.
It was funny. I know of guys that did television in small towns and was very successful. And then I know of guys that still dropping huge coin in this metro area here doing television. And, I don't know what it's paying off or not, but people don't watch television anymore, right? So everybody is on
Commercials,
tablets.
that's for sure. Yeah, right.
So
Right.
we don't do phone books anymore, right? The phone book
Right.
advertising was huge at one time. So I know several guys that came back and said television was great, but we lost a ton of money. We didn't necessarily get the business. As a territory manager, because we would help pay them for a lot of this stuff, right? So as they were buying equipment, we were putting some of that money away in advertising. And there was this thing for a while that everybody wanted to be on television. So the advice was always make sure that you get that 30-minute commercial so you can run it on your website, and you can run it on, there wasn't TikTok back then, but so you can do the TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebook. It's not just on the television piece. So it's almost like get the
Right.
crew in and then decide where you want to put it. That's
Right.
probably a better spend of that money.
Yes, definitely.
I think that was a big thing that I saw just through time, because cable TV, and I guess I kind of came in at the end of it. I'm not that old, I guess, but I just saw guys running that cable TV stuff, and like, man, nobody watches TV anymore. Like, just stop,
Yeah. Part of that conversation earlier with the turf wars, if you will, I've seen it during like mostly during like sporting events, but like on the later end, once you cross over like 10,
Right.
11 o'clock or something, and watching Sunday night game or Monday night game or something. And they have, again, I don't love talking about stuff I don't really understand, but this is connected TV, YouTube TV or whatever. They have all those, you can tap into that a lot easier nowadays and a lot lower entry point than you can with cable and big networks and things like that. So I think that's how they're doing it. But if you're going to do that, I got to imagine on the digital side with localized placements, YouTube, potentially like you said, TikTok reels and stuff like that, in other video placements that are hyper local and geofence and things like that have got to be at least targeted and better impressions, especially if you're working on that really like brand awareness, top of the funnel
Yeah.
stuff that we were talking about. So
I will tell you a funny advertising story. The story's about 2 years old, actually. Have a local contractor here, a good friend of mine, and he buys this guy's hoodies every winter, right? And this has been a thing going on for a year, and it has his logo in the back, that type of thing. I guess technician got fired, left, whatever, and turned those hoodies into the Goodwill. He starts getting phone calls at 8 o'clock in the morning, people screaming at him, "You need to turn social media on. You're on the news," all this other stuff. Well, there was two guys that took a pickup truck and yanked an ATM out of a bank in Pennsylvania, and one of them was wearing that hoodie that the guy sold, gave to the Goodwill or whatever. So this guy is genius enough to where he was like, there's no such thing as bad advertising. And he ran with that story here locally. And
that's so funny.
It's like, we still got our name out there, even though we ripped out an ATM with my shirt on. And I will tell you, there's one more story that a guy did advertising. So we have this thing where we have a news station with a lady that goes after everybody. So and so on your side. So I'm not going to name names because it's probably get back. But so this contractor, a homeowner complained that they pay too much for this part of this repair that he did. And the contractor stood by him because people don't understand what it takes to really run a heating and air company. It's not cheap, right? So yes, even though you may be able to find that part for $95 on the internet, the training, the truck, everything else, right?
Right.
So of course she burns him on the news. And this guy,
Yeah.
we both know him. This is a mutual friend. You know him too. And you might ask him if you ever get him on a podcast. But he took that and kind of just registered. And then he, a couple years later, did a job for a very, very wealthy guy. And the guy had like 27 systems in his house. And so they started doing the work. The guy wouldn't pay him. So he called the news station, got the hold of that lady, and used the relationship from before to get the story on the news. And it was all free advertising. I mean, he was on the news 2 or 3 times to get
That's
updates
awesome.
on where the story is. And
That's
of course,
awesome.
he shows up with all his gear in front of his truck every time. So, you have to be smart. Use what you got.
Yeah.
You don't always have to pay for the television ads. They may come to you.
That's funny. Totally not work related, but back to the sports. Probably no one even knows what this is, but rowing. I rowed crew in college and undergrad. We would go down to Florida, Tampa, specifically for spring training every year. One year we go down, see this guy, a homeless person, and not that that's not funny, but he'd like around where we would stay and row, and he's like, is that guy wearing our jersey? Where the heck did he get our jersey from? And like for the next like couple of years, we'd see the same guy and he was wearing our stuff. And we're like, I don't know, someone left it behind, or if it was,
Right.
Stolen or whatever. We're like, no one ever had a story of like, I gave it to the guy or my stuff was stolen or whatever. But like for like a couple of years, we'd see this guy every year in April for spring training. And he's just walking around Tampa with our jersey and gear on.
Repping.
It's like, yeah, I guess free advertising, right?
It's
Like,
good.
what's this guy from Michigan, from way up north in Michigan, doing down in Florida? Is like, who knows?
That's
Maybe he
funny.
got it from up north. Maybe he got it from Michigan. So,
No kidding.
but anyway, what's your spring circuit look like? Anything?
I don't know what you've seen, but the trade shows the attendance seemed way down. So we decided we're going to go to three events in the beginning of the year, and then we're going to make a decision on the end of the year. But for January, we are in Chicago for AHRI. Excited about that one. That's a big one. I don't know if you're going to that one or not. And then February, we have a small show with SBE, which is a group that coaches contractors. They have a little event. We're hoping to go to that. And then we're going to ACA in March. I think I'll be driving to that one. And that's another thing, starting this new job that I had to get used to. I mean, the travel it's insane during trade show season.
Yeah.
So I think we did 5 cities in 6 weeks, which was insane.
Was that that was over like summer and fall?
No, this was actually just October and November.
Oh, right. When we met. Yeah. Because that was
That was mid-October.
Yeah, we'd be home for a week, and then we're on the road. You're home for 3 or
Yeah,
4
that
days.
was that was wild though. Remember that at
Yes.
you're on a panel and we're in
Yep.
Indianapolis and you guys didn't get very far into your talk, right? I mean, it was
Well,
maybe a quarter of
actually,
the way in.
not to be funny, I thought he was raising his hand to ask a question, and he was having a stroke. And
Caesar.
Caesar,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
And this industry is the most amazing group of people, man, because in the group there was a volunteer EMT that is a heating and air guy. There was a guy with some military training. You jumped in and grabbed the guy's phone, figured out what's wrong with him. Like within like 5 minutes, the entire situation was done and taken care of. Like, and the
Yeah.
guy was
Yeah.
fine. Paramedics was there, but literally, you guys jumped in, and it was so quick how everybody responded. It was very quick, very,
Yeah.
very quick, and the guy was safe. We hated to see that. We got through most of our talk, though. I was running out of subject matter, and nobody was participating. So
Yeah, well,
probably,
yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. I think that was the end
yeah,
of the day, the
end
last
of the second day.
show.
Yep.
It's like, yeah. The fact that the room was full, thumbs up to that. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
most important part. But yeah, participation's always hard, but that was wild. I remember I got his phone and called his daughter, and I think his wife didn't answer or something. And then like his daughter like got all emotional and was like nervous. I was kind of like shaking because I was nervous and just like what's gonna happen to the guy. But wow, that was a first.
Well, I think the scary thing was he was from North Carolina. He was from
Yeah.
Charlotte.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
there by himself. He wasn't,
Yeah,
because most of these guys travel with 2 or 3 guys. He was
he
alone.
was. That's right. Yeah.
And this whole thing happens. Nobody knows his history. Good on
Yeah.
everybody that jumped in.
They didn't want him to get on the plane. That was the big thing because if he has another something on the plane or whatever. I've never had anyone in my immediate life family that has had chronic seizures, but I guess if you're going to have another one, it's going to be like this is
Short
what the
succession.
paramedics. It's going to be in like short succession. So you have to like they want him to go to the hospital and like just kind of be under watch for I don't know what the time period was. And he was like, no, I gotta get
Yeah.
home. I gotta get on my plane that's like in an hour. And I'm like,
Yep.
this is a grown man. Like I'm not making decisions for him, but like I think you probably should listen to everyone on this. So the next couple days after, the ACCA president and CEO Barton James
Yeah.
called and left me a voicemail, just giving me an update. They ended up convincing him to not get on the plane and stay an extra day and go through all the proper checks. So, all was good. That was wild. That was wild.
Yeah. It was interesting end of the day for sure.
Yeah. And shame on me on that note for not reaching out sooner to both of you guys. But I always feel like there's this weird thing with conferences in general
Right.
where I love like meeting the people, but then I hate the like salesy people that are like the day after the conference, you're like, my inbox fills up with people and it's like, God damn it. Like,
Yes.
can you be
And
a
it's
little more like tactful and like whatever?
and they're relentless. So what they do is, so we're running a ThermoGrid special right now, and it's like my phone number is tied to it. So then I think this is somebody calling for the giveaway, and it's like, hey, I met you at ACA, and I would like to sell you this. Come on, man.
Oh boy. Yeah. Why your phone? I guess that makes sense. Like your phone.
I'm a proponent of giving out my phone number even to our customers. I don't mind it. That just comes from, before HVAC kind of be a territory manager, everybody has my phone, and I sift through phone calls. I mean, I don't answer on the spot every time. Leave me a message, but I want our customers to feel like they can reach me at any time and I can help with any issue they may have. So that's a big part of why we do that.
In today's day and age with remote workforces and everything, it's like it's hard to get in touch with people. I mean, this is a segue here, but on our end, on the marketing side, we have a problem getting in touch with people. The industry, everybody's out on sales calls. Very few people in this industry use email.
Right.
So it's actually a problem. And sometimes they talk to so many darn people that like don't know who you are. And it's like,
Right.
dude, you're the one that reached out to me. I'm just trying to do my job. And there's sometimes it goes back and forth, and you're in sales too, so you can appreciate this a little bit. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? The hell with it. Did this the other day where it was like following up with someone, and it's like I called and it ended up being called back, and it ended up being the wife of the owner, and she doesn't even work in the office. I'm like, that's really weird. No, she's like, we need help with our marketing, whatever. It's like, well, why'd you call in the office? I'm like, all right, well, whatever. Here's the message. You reached out to me. I can tell from the outside looking in, everything's a mess and you need a ton of help. Here's my number. Here's what we can help you with. Give it to the missus. And if she wants to call me, here it is.
It's interesting. I've always been a proponent of saying, if you're going to start an HVAC business, part of that licensing needs to be business training. And part of the business training needs to be the marketing piece as well, because these guys, they're really good at what they do, which is not marketing and not always running a business, right? So they're good at customer service and they're good at fixing units and all that type of stuff. They're not necessarily the guys that's going to sit down and figure out a marketing strategy around. They normally hire it. And that's why it's so great that you guys are focusing on this industry.
Yeah, I mean, it happens now. It's getting very interesting too, because you're getting a lot of new people involved because of all the uptick over the last 5 years with COVID and just the space moving in the direction transactionally, mergers, acquisitions, private equity, whatever. But I mean, we get a lot of people, a lot of clients that are ex-bankers that have come in and
Yeah.
bought businesses, and they understand the financial fundamentals and they're learning the trade, but they still don't know anything about marketing, right? But I love working with those type of people because it's very, they're like, here's your piece, marketing. Here's my piece, finance. They're very smart in how they're coming in operating. It's good and bad because some of them are a little too hands off, where it's like, don't want to have reporting calls, don't want to talk about strategy, or, we need some feedback on promotions or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, you do whatever and just let me know. It's like, all right, like that's nice, but also can be dangerous.
The interesting thing was about this private equity piece that happened. It was so almost sudden coming out of COVID, right? So then you find out guys are getting paid 20 times. The industry standard used to be, I think, 5 or 6 times revenue is what you would get for your business. And we're hearing staggering numbers coming out of COVID. But what it did, in my opinion, it's bringing the market up a little bit. So if you're a guy with a heating and air conditioning company in the Raleigh-Durham area, and you're losing to the smaller guy constantly that is not doing the marketing, that isn't doing all that stuff because he's always the lowest guy in the door. Well, with the private equity coming in and buying up these companies, those banking kind of guys, they are not giving systems away. They're not giving service or work away like it was in the market. So my feeling is with those guys coming into the market, everything has been elevated a little bit. Now
That makes
there is
sense.
proper marketing going on. There is
Oh yeah.
guys putting up billboards. There is
Oh
radio
yeah.
and TV ads. It's pretty interesting to me. I think it's good that we have this influx of outside business people coming into the industry.
Yeah, it definitely raises the bar. I mean, those guys, those operators, well, depending on the company, if group buys, they bring in an operator, assign an operator. The operator is, responsible for reviewing the business, overhauling the business, adjusting operational things, squeezing out money and inefficiencies. Right. And that might be changing, marketing. It might be squeezing your call center, your CSRs, your dispatch, whatever, inventory, right? Like
Right.
looking for efficiencies there. And then what are you left with? More money to put in the right places, right? To get that return on investment and to, look at those KPIs, cost per lead, cost per acquisition, and really juice the business. I forget where you're at. You're in North Carolina, right?
Raleigh, North Carolina. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it is Raleigh. Okay. And I'm in Cincinnati. There's like a war going on, man. Like the billboard spend. I mean, you cannot drive down a highway without seeing just billboard after billboard after billboard. There's two that are owned by Home Services Group. There's one that's owned by private equity, and then another one that has not transacted yet or not done anything. So they're fighting. I don't know what the major highway in Raleigh is, but like we've got like I-75, bam, and like that space is not cheap.
No.
Like it's
Yeah.
got a lot of traffic.
And I've always wondered about that. And you being kind of the marketing guru can kind of help set me straight. So I'm going to go as a heating and air guy, and I'm going to pay all this money for a billboard on a highway like that with most people that doesn't live in my area. And I get that there's traffic in the afternoon and the morning. I get all that. But is that really being spent properly? Right. So you get traffic running, like you said, through there going down to Florida. Is it really the eyeballs that I want? If I have more than one location, sure. Right.
Right. We're strictly on the digital side, but my opinion to anyone on this is it has its place. if you're, under 5 million, small neighborhood, whatever, group, no, like you're not there
Right.
yet. Maybe you can buy space on a baseball field or, something like that for those impressions, but it has its place. It just depends on where you are in your business, and going into the 20, 30, 40, 50 million annual revenue numbers, you're at the point in your strategy where impressions have an impact, and that you're working on your brand, right, at that
Right.
point in time, and brand impressions. And it's like, why do TV commercials work? It's brand awareness and brand impressions, and you do need to be at the bottom of the funnel in terms of like, working on just converting like crazy. But at that point, you've got money to spend. You're just trying to bring in more eyeballs that
Right.
actually look for you and potentially will look for your brand instead of your service. It depends where you are in your company and your journey, but it definitely works. You don't have, again, I'm not in this space, but you don't have the ways to digitally measure it like you do digital, but a lot of times you can tell in terms of like how this stuff is working on a more macro, quarterly, biannual sort of level. Like, what's my spend, what people are coming in, and just maintaining revenues and sales at that point in time. So, and we have a bunch of groups too. I'm sure it's there in Raleigh and the surrounding suburbs, that we have like off highway billboards. You
Yeah.
get like the rural roads and stuff like
Right.
that, which are way, 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 way cheaper. But, again, same sort of impression, but, maybe you're spending high end, maybe like $5,000 a billboard. Low end, you probably get those things for like $1,000 or something. And it's all part of this, like the strategy of how you're trying to grow too. Like, if you're trying to grow from the north suburbs of Raleigh to the south suburbs to the east suburbs to the west suburbs, how are you sprinkling yourself out there? Digital works, but at some point you don't have any neighborhood juice at that point in time where you can like go to, hyper local strategies where you can go to, again, like chamber of commerces and rotary clubs and high schools and bakeries and those type of things to work super, super hyper local and spend, dollars for sponsorships and, church bulletins and, really hyper local stuff. It's harder to do because you need that like neighborhood level relationship to, go out and reach out to the high school and like go out and reach out to the Rotary Club and all that stuff. Just to close this out, the point is like the billboard it's an easier, less personal way to get into that, that sort of like
All
hyper
right.
local versus that, startup, where if you're like the startup HVAC guy, what are you going to do? Well, I say this all the time, go to your kid's high school, go to whatever neighborhood you're in and go do a deal with the baseball team, go do a deal with the PTO. It's going to cost you nothing,
Right.
maybe a couple $1,000 for a whole year of like, your logo in the outfield or on the scoreboard or something like that. It takes work, but like, it's great. It's a great way to start.
The awesome byproduct from that is you can start creating your own workforce out of that, right? So you start
Right.
sponsoring youth, and then you can really start getting back into that conversation about getting the youth into this industry. But
Like,
just to
go into the rugby teams, maybe, just
we
for
do it
example.
already. But just to
Your
kind of bring
fundraiser,
that,
you probably got a holiday fundraiser coming up, right?
you're reading my mind. One more point on the billboard thing, though, is you can spend $5,000 on that billboard. However, you have 20 vehicles sitting in your yard that if you spend $2,500 a piece and wrap them properly, then that is your billboard. Now,
Right.
getting your technicians not to drive like banshees, there's that.
I just read, can't remember where I read that. I was reading a review of someone complaining about that. I think it was someone's Google review, and it was exactly that. It was like, I loved this company, but driver, 561, I see him around our neighborhood all the time, and he drives like a, complete,
Right.
what. Hire these guys, but make sure you don't get that driver because it's gonna like run over a kid or something. Anyway, all right, well, cool. Well, great having you, and thanks again, and we'll talk again soon.